Welcome back from the breather. Still watching JoyNews Interactive here on the JoyNews channel, on DSTV channel 421 and Go TV channel 144. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for TikTok. All right, Spiky joins me in studio. Spiky, you all right? Everything
I'm always
cool?
100.
You cool? Sure?
I'm cool, yeah.
All right, okay, cool. Now, we're talking about choosing the best PC, right?
Yeah.
While continuing our series, we've done some extensive work. Today, we're talking about choosing a RAM.
Yeah.
Which is not a, is it a some
It's not
type
goats.
of goat's
No.
sheep? No,
It's not.
Okay, okay. So, what is a RAM?
So RAM, random access memory.
Yeah.
Basically, we've been talking about how to choose the right components, how to choose your PC.
Yes.
And then we're breaking down the components. So we've done the CPU, we've done the GPU. Now we're talking about choosing the right RAM. So when it comes to RAM, it's what basically sits between your machine and your processor and the rest of the computer. So almost all your temporary stuff are stored on your RAM. So a lot of people would ask, like, why do I need a RAM? What kind of size RAM? And it's measured in gigabytes.
Okay.
Previously it was kilobytes, then it went to megabytes, and now we're in gigabytes because one is big. And laptops and desktops, they don't use the same size of RAM. When I say size, I don't mean capacity, I mean physical size.
Okay.
So laptops have smaller RAM because they have smaller form factors, and desktops have bigger ones. And even the connections, they're different on laptops and desktops. So now moving in. So if you're choosing RAM, you want to know that your computer can actually have an impact on the RAM that you choose. So say you want to install above 8 gigs of RAM on your computer, you need to know that a computer that's running 32 bits of an OS cannot utilize more than that amount. So like 4 gigs of RAM, 32 bits, that's the maximum. If you're using about 8 gigs, 16 gigs, you need 64 bits of RAM to be able to maximize or to be able to utilize all that amount of RAM. Now, moving on beyond that, your OS also determines how much RAM you can use. If your your CPU can determine the amount of RAM that you need to use. If you're using an old version of the CPU, trust me, you're not going to
And for those who forgot, what is CPU again?
Your central processing unit. That's basically your processor.
Yes.
Your i3, your i5, your i7, or your AMD Ryzen 3, 5, or 7. Now, in RAM, we have bandwidth too, where we have single channel, dual channel, and then quad channel. Now, when I say single channel, it's obvious. It's just one channel. So you have one RAM stick communicating with the whole system.
Okay.
Now, in the dual channel, you have 2 RAM sticks that are doing this, as you can see on the screen. So quad channel means that you have 4 sticks of RAM, and then all that handles the communication between your CPU and the RAM. It's not necessary for you to even know all about this. It's just maybe you want to build the computer yourself, you want to build your desktop, and you're considering which level of RAM you should use or which kind of multi-channel RAM setup is good for you. Most of the time, servers are the ones that use multiple channels where you have up to about 16 different RAM sticks in a machine. Like I mentioned last week, servers, they need to have a fail-safe. So in case some part of the system stops working, another part can take over. So beyond that, your RAM capacity is another thing too that you need to consider. That's the most important thing that when you're buying, let's say, a laptop and you go and check your specs, you see it has 4 gigs of RAM, 8 gigs of RAM, 16 or 32 gigs of RAM. 16, 32, 64 gigs of RAM, that's for people who do very intensive stuff like video editing, motion graphics, animation, and gaming.
Yeah.
If you're the regular person, I wouldn't advise you to go for 4 gigs of RAM. That's pretty much, it's not enough nowadays. Computers now, even phones now have above 8 gigs. So if you're getting a computer that has 4 gigs of RAM,
it doesn't really make sense.
It won't cut it. Your browser would probably end up chewing up all that RAM. But getting 32 gigs of RAM is also overkill if you're not going to be using it for stuff like video editing or animation or stuff like that. So 8 gigs, if you're a basic user, should be fine for you.
Okay. All right, so RAM capacity, so you're saying that I should get an 8 gig. But
minimum.
But out of all of this, what's the most important thing I need to look out for when I'm looking at my RAM? Is it the capacity? Just the
yes.
capacity.
Unless you're someone who's going to build a desktop or a gaming machine or a workstation for working, then you need to look at other things like what kind of motherboard you're using, and then the channels come in, and then all that stuff come to play. But other than that, you just need to be concerned about your RAM capacity.
So this is my random access memory. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so my RAM is my random access memory. So where I can randomly access my memory. All right, thank you so much, Maki, for that. Do join us next week, Wednesday, for some more Tech Talk.